Our third question is, sustainable brands are incredibly expensive, and most of the time I can't justify spending $50 on a plain t-shirt. I believe that most people want to be sustainable, but fast fashion is what they can afford. So how can we promote and support sustainable brands while allowing them to become more cost effective? Sabrina, go ahead.
Just the first take on that. I mean, I understand that, finances may be tight, but why can't you spend $50 on a t-shirt if all you need is 2 or 3? I mean, it's all, it's all relative. Yeah, that those, if I come from, a mindset in which, or I grew up in this fast fashion kind of consumption mode, and then maybe I end up with a closet that has 50 t-shirts in it, or 150, or I don't know what. But that's not what we need. In consumer behavior class, we spend a lot of time talking and trying to differentiate what's a want and what's a need. Nobody needs 150 t-shirts. Nobody needs a new t-shirt every month. And so I think this price argument really is subjective. Yeah, it's understandable where this kind of an argument comes from, but that doesn't have to be, the way forward if we also consider being more sustainable in our overall consumption patterns. Yeah, and also I'm not sure whether in all cases, that $50 price tag actually is realistic. We do have more sustainable options that come in at a much lower ticket price.
Beautifully said. Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on this topic?
Well, I'm happy to, but let me jump in here. So we live in this world on selling what we consider to be competitively priced, sustainable fashion. And there are limitations, but for the most part, when we had a retail store, you could come in and you could buy a sustainably made organic cotton t-shirt that was made in the United States, GOTS certification dyed, screen printed ethically, and that t-shirt was $15, $20, reasonably priced. If you're buying in bulk, if you're used to buying 5 t-shirts at a time, I can understand why that would affect somebody and make them second guess it. But I believe Sabrina's nailing it. It's how much you consume, how much you can wear, what do you really care about? And I think in a time like this, when everybody's spending time at home, this is a perfect opportunity for you to go through your closet, to evaluate what you have in there and what do you really love. And I think most people will find that when you separate your clothes out, there's really only a handful of garments that you wear over and over again. And those are the garments that you spend the money on to replace. You make sure that you have a great, comfortable jacket that you love. You don't need 10 jackets. Most people do have 10 jackets now because they want a different option when they're dressing, how they feel. It's an expression of who they are. But when you get down to the core of it, if you're buying something sustainable, it doesn't have to mean your entire wardrobe is sustainable. Commit to a handful of goods that you care about because of the way that they're made. And then because of the way that they're made and the money that you paid for them, you'll treat them differently. You'll repair them. You'll wash and wear them in a different manner than if they were a throwaway garment. And I think even though people want to be sustainable, they don't want to change their behaviors most of the time. So it really does start with changing the mindset of what do you consider clothing? Is it a disposable good or is it an investment?
Yeah, thank you. Kathleen?
One last thing is the very last part of this question, I think is really important, which is if you buy sustainably produced apparel, it'll increase the economies of scale and it will reduce the price over time. It'll also support innovation. So a sustainable plain t-shirt might have been $50 5 years ago, but right now there's some good choices that are only $30, $35 range that are out there that are, one might debate at what is sustainably produced apparel, but the prices have declined. And we have a parallel which happened with organic food, which was initially, there was an extraordinarily high price premium on it that premium decreased over time. There's no reason not to believe the same thing would happen with sustainably produced apparel, which is that over time, people will innovate and figure out better choices of materials, better choices in design. We have some really amazing things happening, like 3D printing for shoe tops that don't have any salvage waste, and are produced on demand. So it's dramatically making certain kinds of athletic shoes better, more wonderful fitting shoes, but also more sustainable, using less material. So I think supporting sustainable companies is the essential part of this. By buying it, it will help forward it.
Sabrina?
It's one more thought.
And then Lauren.
That just occurred to me. Remember we had a recession a couple of years ago. Since then, the prices for virtually all products have gone up. Yeah, food products, everything. Apparel has pretty much stayed the same. Yeah, so we're used to, have these cheap stuff being thrown at us. But we totally disregard that, prices overall have increased, and many consumers are just not willing to consider that as, that's how the world works. Stuff gets more expensive, and in apparel, we just have this mindset that it has to be so cheap because that's what we learned, and that's just something that clearly needs to change. And it will change because, as we see right now, you're not even talking about COVID-19, but we can't expect that the apparel we're going to get, next year is actually going to be as cheap as the stuff that we got last year, because things have changed, fundamentally changed.
Right, for sure. Oh, I stopped my video, sorry. All right, Lauren, if you'd like to speak now.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to say, this is something that we definitely talk about in the workshops, and I started first hosting minimalist wardrobe workshops with the idea of helping people decipher what in their wardrobe they're actually wearing and what are good investment pieces. As much as I like to support sustainable brands, because I do, at the same time, I also really encourage purchase of used or vintage clothing, especially vintage clothing that has been made, to last a very long time. They don't make it like they used to is definitely, true. And so one of the parts of the workshop is actually recognizing what makes a quality item. Everything from the type of zipper and the stitching, if the stitching lines are matching up with the pattern, all of these various kind of little clues into whether this is going to be a worthwhile item to invest in, whether it's a new piece or when you're searching the racks in a thrift store or somewhere like that. Is this a quality item, period, that I want to have? The different types of fabrics. So all of that, you can be sustainable very, very cheaply, much less than $50 a t-shirt, maybe $5 or $3 if you're headed to the thrift store. And I, try to talk about how ideally, instead of a food pyramid, which it's not a pyramid anymore, but if we had a food pyramid, at the bottom layer is used clothing, if you can source it, whether that's from a clothing swap, the thrift store, vintage. I do a lot of purchasing on Poshmark in different places, and then moving up the chain, and then at the top would be sustainably sourced fashion, new items. But I think having a mix helps offset some of those costs as well.
I love the idea of the metaphor of food pyramid. Thank you for sharing that.